Hello. In today's lesson, we're going to be talking about equations, and we're breaking this down into two kinds of equations. We're going to talk about solving one-step equations, and secondly, we're going to talk about solving two-steps equations. And then after that, we're going to move on into graphs. So we're going to learn about table of values, creating table of values, and we're going to do some other work on graphs as well. Alright, so we're going to start right away with solving one-step equations. So one-step equations are those equations that we only need one main step to solve. And then when we get to two-step equations, we need two steps to solve them. So before we get deeper into this, let's just talk a little bit about an equation. So what is an equation? An equation, as we can see from the word, it has the word equal. So that means that for an equation, we're going to have two sides. We have the left-hand side and we have the right-hand side. And then there is the equal to sign in between. And so that is an equation. So basically, we're trying to say that the left-hand side equals the right-hand side. So whenever we have this kind of scenario, whereby we've got two sides and we have the equal to sign in between, we call that an equation. Alright, so solving one-step equations. So we're going to start by dealing with, I'm just going to see example. We're going to start by dealing with these kinds of scenarios, ax equals b. So in this case, a and b are regular numbers. X is a variable that we're being asked to solve for. So these kinds of cases. So an example here is going to be 2x equals 4. And in this case, they're saying that find x. So find x in this situation. Well, 2x equals 4. So what we need to do is every single time we have to figure out a way to get our variable by itself. So in this case, the x is called a variable. A variable is what we are solving for. So usually your variable is the unknown or what you're solving for. So that's why we're saying find x. So we're solving for x. So because we're solving for x, we have to find a way to get x by itself. So right now x is not by itself. X is joined by 2. X is multiplied by 2. So we have to find a way to get rid of 2. So a rule of thumb here, in many cases, you have to do the opposite operation to get rid of that particular thing you want to get rid of. So, for example, if you're adding, the opposite is subtracting. If you're multiplying, the opposite is dividing, for example. So, here I'm doing 2 times x because 2x means 2 times x. So I'm multiplying. So I can see here that if I can divide this by 2, then I'm going to get rid of this 2. And that's exactly what we want to do. Now another thing I want to say here is whenever we're dealing with equations, we're dealing with balance. So that means there must be a balance because we're saying the two sides are equal. So which means if the two sides are equal, if we're introducing something new to one side, we must also introduce the same thing to the other side. So that means that if we are introducing division by 2 to the left side, we must also introduce the same thing to the right side. So I'm going to say 2x equals 4. And like we said, we're going to divide by 2 because we can see here that the 2's are going to cancel out. And that's exactly why we want to divide by 2. But now, because we've introduced this here, we must also introduce it to the right side. Please let's be careful not to forget this. Sometimes if we're new at this, we can sometimes forget. So please let's be careful. And so here now, we have to do 4 divided by 2. So we can say, so we're looking for a common factor here, preferably the greatest common factor. And that one is 2 because 2 goes into 2 and 2 goes into 4. So we can say, how many times does 2 go into 2? It is 1. How many times does 2 go into 4? It is 2. So now, here, we're just going to have x left equals 2 over 1 is 2. So that's how this one is done. Now let's go to the other kind of question here. I'm going to say question 2, negative 3x equals 6, like this. So, for this scenario, find x. So we have to get x by itself. So right now the problem is negative 3. So we have to figure out what to do to get rid of this. Rule of thumb, usually whenever you're multiplying by the variable here, if you want to get rid of the number written beside the variable, you always divide by that number. So that will always get rid of the number beside the variable. And secondly, notice here there was no positive, there was no sign, even though it is positive. Here we have a negative. Please don't only move the 3. Please make sure you also move the negative. So we have to move everything beside the x. So in this case, everything beside the x is negative 3. So we're going to say negative 3x is 6. So divide by negative 3 and divide by negative 3. Because remember, whatever new we're introducing on this side, we have to introduce on this side. Because we're calling this an equation, meaning that 2 sides are equal. So 2 sides are supposed to be equal. And that's why we did this here. So the negatives cancel, the 3's cancel, which is exactly our goal. And then over here, really we have a positive here. So positive over negative is negative. And then 6 divided by 3 is 2. And that's it. Let's move on to the third one. So this time we want to move to a different form. The form is x over a equals b. A does not equal 0. The question is x over 2 equals 4. Find x. So we're moving on to this form here. A can't equal 0 because whenever you have a fraction, the denominator must not equal 0. X over a equals b. A and b are your regular numbers. X is your unknown or your variable. So this is our example here. There are 2 ways of doing this. Method number 1, I'm going to, what I'm looking at here is this. I want to get x by itself. Right now it is not by itself. So right now we have x over 2. So we have to figure out what we can do to get rid of over 2. Now over 2 means divided by 2, the opposite of divided by 2 is multiplied by 2. So I'm going to try that here to see if it's going to work. Now I can see clearly here that this is going to work because the 2's are going to cancel each other. And that's exactly what we want to do. We want the 2's, we want the 2 to be gone. So they're going to cancel each other out. So whatever you can do to get rid of the other item there so that you have your variable by itself is exactly what you're going to do. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to multiply by 2. So here we're going to have x left. On the right we're going to have 8. So this is, I'm going to say method A here. Then I'm going to do method B. For method B, anytime you have something like this and you have fractions, you can cross multiply. So cross multiply means that the top number on the left multiplies by the bottom number on the right, and the bottom number on the left multiplies the top number on the right. So if we like, instead of 4, we can write 4 over 1 because they're the same thing. So I'm going to have x over 2 equals 4 over 1. I cross multiply. So basically you just follow the lines. X times 1, you follow that. And 2 times 4, you follow that. So x times 1 is x. 2 times 4 is 8. X times 1 is x. 2 times 4 is 8. This is another way of doing this. So now we're going to move on to solving two-step equations. We're going to start with this form of two-step equations. So the example is 2x plus 3 equals 1. So the form ax plus b equals c. So 2x plus 3 equals 1. So we're starting with this. So in this case, x is the variable or the unknown. A, b, and c are regular numbers. And the same thing applies here. So if we like, we can just say find x. Or we understand that that's exactly what we're trying to do. So my goal is at the end of the day to get x by itself. So right now, we have to deal with two things. We have to find a way to get rid of this, 3 plus 3. We have to find a way to get rid of 2. But the trick here is order. So you must get rid of the number that is not attached to x before getting rid of the number that is attached to x. So we have to get rid of plus 3 first. So I think plus 3, what is the inverse operation? Or what is the opposite operation? It is minus 3. So I'm going to minus 3 on both sides. Minus 3 on both sides. So here I'm going to have 2x. Plus 3 minus 3 is 0. That's exactly why we're doing this. Because 0, so this is gone, equals 1 minus 3 is negative 2. So now, I need to get rid of 2 because I'm solving for x. So what can I do here to get rid of 2? I can divide this side by 2, and I can just cancel out the 2's, and the 2 will be gone. But again, whatever new you're doing here, you must introduce here. So the 2's are gone. Negative over positive is negative. So we have just the x left here. Negative over positive, negative. 2 over 2 is 1. I'm going to interrupt a little bit here. I want to show us how to verify our work or check our work. I'm not going to show this for every single question. I'm just going to show it probably here and there, and then you can still apply it to every single example or question. So to verify our work, we're going to go back to the original statement. We're going to create a table, left hand side and right hand side. Now, the left hand side is 2x plus 3. The right hand side is 1. So my goal is to plug in the answer that we got here into our statement here. So anywhere we see x here, we plug it in. If we don't see any x, for example here, we just take this as our final answer on the right side. So our goal is we do our calculation when we get to the bottom. If the two numbers are the same, then that means our solution here is correct.